Hey guys, Judy Seeger here, back with your 7-day challenge. We are on the last day. Yay! I'm so happy for you guys. 7 days seems like a long day, or long week, I should say, and it's a challenge. That's what it's why we call this 7-day challenge. So this last day is the most important day. This is the one you would think I would start with that, but we're really not usually ready for that. We need to kind of work our way into it. So each day we talked about the different challenges that you need to do, and today is a day, if you don't want to do any therapies whatsoever, that's fine, and you could just focus on this part. This is really the foundational key part of all healing, not just for cancer, but for every single disease out there, for ultimate health. This is the day you want to be on and learn what it takes to really have the health and the life that you're meant to live. And that is to rebalance your emotional, mental, spiritual part. It's huge. It's a big part of healing. And any practitioner that doesn't work with this really shouldn't be calling themselves a practitioner, because without this, I'm telling you, there's just you just don't get the same results. You could take pills all day. You could take great food, organic food. You could do every therapy under the sun. But without knowing how to rebalance your emotional, mental, spiritual part, you're really not at that point where you could help yourself. So this is the part. I have 3 things that I downloaded for you guys, and I want you to make sure that you take a look at them. Spend the day, spend the evening, spend the morning, whatever time you could spend on this. So first things first is you want to take the emotional freedom quiz. This is something I used to do. I used to have something called Cancer Cleanse Camps, and they were places, events where I had people come to a place where they would do all the therapies I'm teaching you guys, plus we would do this part, the emotional freedom quiz, so that they would know where they're at. So I encourage you guys, take some time, take some quiet time to fill this out, to look to see where you are, because otherwise, how do you know what's going on? You might think you're a happy camper. I think I told you guys that story about when I was going through my divorce and had a horrible time. I was a single mom, and on and on and on in my 30s, and I had a horrible time, and I became very angry, very bitter, just had some rough emotions that were not me. And I had a mentor who looked at me, and my body language was like I was stiff, and my fingers were clenched all the time, and he looked at me and he says, "Why are you so angry?" And like, I'm not angry, which was a sure sign that I was angry. And I would fly up at the slightest thing, and so I realized he was right, and I needed to deal with it. So I went on a journey of 3 years to learn what that was, because I didn't have the things I'm giving you guys now. I didn't have the quizzes, I didn't have the things to read, I didn't have the connections, so I had to really kind of wind my way on that journey. So I'm giving you guys a shortcut, and I love shortcuts, right? But there is no shortcut as far as you facing the issues yourself. That is going to be your journey, and I'm going to give you guys some key points on how to do that. So first off, let's do the emotional freedom quiz. I'm not going to do it with you, because that would be a really long event here and a live video feed, and I don't think it's necessary. I think it's mostly that you guys sit down and do it. I do want to just start you out, because I'm going to read it to you guys, because if you don't really get honest with yourself, it's like you don't even know where you're at. So for example, the first question on the quiz is, and you answer that it's totally not true, or it's sometimes true, or it's mostly true, right? So if you answer the question, number 1, if I'm angry with someone, I'll breathe and center myself before I react. Now, when I was going through my issues, right, in my 30s, there's no way. I would just fly off the handle. Someone cut me off, I'd be screaming at them in a rage. I would get just screaming, because I was just not balanced, right? And I was just really, really angry. And so if I'm angry with someone, I'll breathe and center myself before I react. Do I do that now? Yes, I take a step back, and I'm able to look at the situation and not react right away. That's now. Back then, That's not true. I did not breathe. I was just flying off the handle. So that was a not true. And then number two, when I'm filled with self-doubt or fear, I treat myself lovingly. And back in the day, I didn't. I was go, 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 go. I was working 70, 80 hours a week between going to school, having a clinic, my daughter, all these different things. I was not taking care of myself at all. And I was really, really exhausted. And I realized I didn't even know how to take care of myself at that time. Now, I'll go to the beach, I'll drop everything, and I'll go for a walk, I'll go for a foot massage. It's a totally different thing. But back then, no, I did. So that, at that time, was not true. Number three, when stuck in traffic or if something doesn't happen on my timetable, I have patience. Again, like I said, back in that day, I was enraged, I was screaming, I was hollering. So all was not true. If you have a lot of not truths, and you're seeing this pattern, you might want to look at yourself and say, I'm definitely seeing that I have a pattern of not taking care of myself, I'm holding on to anger, I'm having issues that I'm not dealing with, and then you need to go to the next step. Okay, so take the quiz, get some quiet time, assess where you're at, and usually I will just tell you guys, really forthright, I'm always with you guys, lay everything on the table, that people who are in a disease state, whether it's cancer, autoimmune disease, whatever it is, most people are in this place where they're not balanced, right? Emotionally, they're just in chaos. Lots of things have hit them and they've not let things go. Or the other one is like, no, everything's fine. I'm good. I feel good today. And not dealing with the reality of that there's really something going on. Denial. That's a long river, right? Got to stick that in. Here's the deal. Get serious with yourself and figure out what is it that you're not dealing with, right? I know that when I was faced with that mentor who said I was angry all the time, I really was in denial. There's no doubt about it. I was like, I don't want to deal with it. It's painful to look at the issues that have caused heartache in your family and what has caused heartache in yourself personally, and it hurts. There's no doubt about it. It definitely hurts, and it's tough to deal with this stuff. And yet, if you don't, my friend, I'm telling you, if you do not deal with this on some level, your pH is going to be really off, and there is nothing you can balance that like dealing with the emotional, mental, spiritual part, right? So there's no hardcore way to do this. First thing is that you have to assess where you're at and see what your level, and be really honest with yourself, because it's just between you and you. There's nobody else around. This is your journey. This is something you have to look at. This is something that you have to understand, okay? The next part of this rebalancing of the emotional, mental, spiritual part is something that is a huge part of all healing, and it's dealing with the forgiveness. Now, all of us have had trauma. You've certainly heard my story with the trauma I had with the divorce, the horrific way the divorce went, and then with my kids, and just all this kind of stuff, right? So the thing is that you have to look at, just like I did, is you have to forgive, right? You have to let it go. And it's not the easiest thing. It's the hardest thing you will ever do, but it's an important part. So you take it in steps. So I have on here, let me get my documents on here, I have them on my computer here. You have, let me just get the title correctly. Here you go. Refusing to Forgive, the 9 Steps to Break Free. I thought it was a great article. It's not written by me, although there's lots of things that I certainly could have written something similar. But the thing is that the 9 Steps to Break Free it's a great article. Take a look at it. And then Ashna in our group sent an excellent video from a psychotherapist, I believe, on the TEDx. Watch that video as well. I posted it on here. I actually posted it on my public page as well because I thought it was so powerful. But the bottom line is this: when you're in a place in your life, and I'm going to make a point here, that someone really did some damage to you, like my ex really did some huge major damage to me, and I certainly did damage to him as well. It was a two-way street. It wasn't just all him, and I take ownership on that. But I had to forgive that. And then it came down to, I had some issues with my mother, I had some issues with my father, I had some issues from childhood that I had never ever dealt with. Because, you know, when you get in relationships or you get in situations, circumstances, whether it's work, whether it's where you live, whether it's having family, whether it's being in whatever relationship, whatever you're in, if there's a reason that you ended up there, right? And a lot of time it's because how we were raised, our upbringing, we're taught a certain way of reacting to things in our life because our parents taught us this, right? So mother-father issues, I guarantee you, will definitely come into the picture, and you have to deal with that. So even though you've had trauma in your life and you're thinking, oh yeah, you know, now I've had, you know, this, whatever it is, whether it's divorce or a bad situation in a relationship, whatever it is, the root of it is our upbringing with our parents, and you have to deal with that on some level. So if there are issues with your mom and your dad, it is time to look at that. Now, I'm not saying you have to sit down with them, because a lot of times they don't get where we're at, and that's okay. It's not about them, it's about us. So the root issue is to look at, what is it in your life that you have been affected by your mom and dad? We all have it. You know, all of us have some detail in our life with our mother and father. And my culture, the European culture, was that the mother is the head of the family, basically, and the mother is very controlling. That's the word I would say. And, you know, there's a lot of control issues that came along with that and affected me. And so I had to deal with that. And as I dealt with that, I realized there's issues, and I went to support groups, I went to church meetings, I went to talk to everybody, anybody I could. I looked for answers because I realized that how I was reacting to the things with my mom were because I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know how to deal with stuff when I was growing up. As a child, you don't know. And so I realized that I need to deal with that and learn what the issue was, because that's what resulted in situations with my relationship with whoever I was with, right? So it's super important that you get into the mode of understanding the root issues. Read the article and then understand this. Now, the next part of healing and rebalancing, the spiritual, mental, emotional, spiritual part, is to understand that you have to let it go. And that's a tough one, because yes, you could understand the issue. Yes, you could understand that you have to forgive, but then the actual step of letting it go is tough. That was the toughest thing I ever did. And I shared with you guys a story of getting lost in Arizona on my trip to the Grand Canyon, and then, you know, getting absolutely furious with the whole situation. Again, because it wasn't the situation that we got lost. The situation was because I was angry. I was holding on to things, and I had a lot of things I was holding on to. Many, many things, not just one. And finally, when I got to pull to the side of the road and stop and pick up a rock, and I said, you know what, I'm putting everything in this rock and then throwing it and really letting go. It wasn't easy after. You know, the after story of that is, yeah, I there was a big release to realize I'm forgiving all these people, my mom, my dad, my ex, my this, my that. I forgave everybody. But the actual process of letting it go wasn't easy. So what happened after that, and this is again a pattern I've seen in my clinic with thousands of people, is that, yeah, you know, people come and say, yeah, I forgave everybody that caused problems, my kids and my spouse and my workplace, people hurt me there, you know, whatever it was, they would say, yeah, I forgave everybody. And I'm like, okay, so why do you look so ripping angry? Why are you so upset about stuff? Why do you look sad? Why are you crying? You know, and a lot of times people would cry in my clinic because they had not truly let go. They had forgiven. But the next step of really letting it go and completing that process is the hardest part. So as you're understanding that forgiveness is a big issue, you also have to understand that you have to let go and keep letting it go, right? Because what will happen is those emotions, the feelings will come back every time you see the person. So for example, when I'm with my mom, I love my mom. But you know, she pushes my buttons and I push hers and things come up. But because I've forgiven and let go, they don't bother me as much. I'm like, okay, whatever, I love you, and it is what it is, and not a problem. But back when I was going through the healing process, when she would push my button, I would react, and I would get angry, and she would get upset, and we had this constant battling of the wills, right? And so at that time it was really tough. But as we continually worked out the process, as we continually worked out the issues, and again, it was on me, not on her. I had to deal with the issues. She wasn't going to change. Mom was mom. Dad was dad. That was it. I was not expecting them to change. I had to change what was in my heart and really let it go and say, okay, they are who they are. I just have to learn what my boundaries are and how to take care of myself, and let it go to the point where it's not going to bother me. And that, I remember that day when I really knew I had it, because I was driving along, and remember, I had road rage. That's really what it's called, right? I had road rage, and I realized that I was getting out of control. But the day that I remember somebody cut in front of me, I was like, no problem, just go right ahead. Not fine, it's good. And I didn't even feel anything. I was like, oh. And I just remember like realizing that feeling that I had truly let go, and a little thing like somebody cutting me off was okay. And then as I was around my family and they started pushing my buttons, it didn't push my buttons. I felt great. I felt the letting go. I didn't feel that reaction with them, right? And that's how you know. That's a huge barometer that you have peace about situations. When people try to, kind of push on you, that you just like, that doesn't bother me. I'm fine. Now, another barometer that's huge that that you've gotten to that point where you've let go is that you don't cry when you talk about it. This is a huge one. When I was in my clinic, and I would always ask people to say, hey, what was the trauma that you have experienced in your life, right? And they would say their story, and sometimes it was an accident, sometimes it was a relational issue, sometimes it was some bad choices they had made, but it had traumatized them. And it happened either as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, didn't matter, but it traumatized them. And many times, I would say like 75% of the time, as they were sitting there telling me the story, they'd be crying. I mean, the tears would just be pouring down their face as they were telling me their story and reliving it. And I could see the pain, I could feel their pain, that they had really been traumatized and it had affected them. And they just hadn't gotten over it. And they would say to me the very next sentence, always, every single time, but I have forgiven that person. And I would be like, well, if you've forgiven them, why do you still have all that pain? And, they just said, I don't know, right? So here's the thing, is when you are in that place where you're still crying as you remember the trauma, that means it really hasn't been healed yet. And you have to get to the place of healing. And healing comes from truly letting go and allowing the peace to come in so that it doesn't bother you anymore. And you could tell the story. Like you could see me telling you guys a story about the ex and the kids and all that. And there's no tears. In fact, I'm laughing about it now because it really is healed, right? But when I used to tell the story, same thing. I would be crying, and I would just have this deep pain in me, right? And it took a long time to realize what I had to do to heal that. So what do you have to do to heal that? Number one, you have to face it and go deep. Is it your mother issue, your father issue? It's not the situation you're in now. I will just tell you that right now. It's not. So if you're having a bad time with whatever you're in now that has caused you to be sick, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, then you have to really look at the root issue. And it starts with your mom and dad, and then it comes out to a trauma in your life. Every one of us have had traumas. Every one of us has something going on. And how you dealt with that. How did it affect you? And you got to go deep on this one. So your homework today will be to think about what was the trauma. What are the things that, as your mom and dad were raising you, that really affected you? And look at that. Sometimes you need to make a list. No, I did. It's like, okay, mom's control issues, mom being disrespectful to me and my lifestyle, and blah, 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 blah. And I would just, make a list, right? And then my father not accepting me, my father bad-mouthing me, and I just made that list, right? And then I remember going off and really thinking about those different points and then dealing with each point as it came up and thinking about certain specific, the more specific you could get, the better. I know there's a whole therapy on this, and yeah, you go to a therapist for this, but I'm giving you guys a shortcut. All you have to do is think about the things that affected you, face them and really feel them, and then say, all right, what do I have to do to let this go? Right? What is it that you really have to do to let it go? And you have to think about that and say, all right, you know what? I don't want this in my life. I need to not just forgive, but let it go so I have the peace that I know is mine. And that process, saying out loud, thinking out loud, it's the whole process. There's something to be said out loud to say, yeah, my mom was controlling, is still controlling. She's not going to change. I need to let that go. And I don't want that in my life, right? Now, the next step after that is, what do you do once you realize what it is and understand it? What will you do to protect yourself? Because here's the biggie. These are gold nuggets I'm sharing with you guys, not only from my experience, but in working with others with cancer mostly, is people will still come in and try to push on you, and you're not going to have the skill set to know how to protect yourself. And you're going to keep getting hurt, and you're still going to get affected. And so you need to learn how to set boundaries. Boundaries that are polite, boundaries that are effective and protect you. And so there's a couple of resources. In fact, as I'm thinking about it, there's another one I just thought about. I'm gonna share that with you guys. But the one thing that really helped me was I read a book called Boundaries. It was by McLeod and Henry Townsend, something like that. I'll write it down for you guys below. And I even went to a church to find the class, to take the class on boundaries, because what I found out, as my mom kept pushing on me and I kept reacting, I didn't know really how to set that boundary in a firm but loving way. And I would react and I'd be pissed off at her and come back in a disrespectful way. And I didn't feel good about it either. And so I realized I need some skill set of knowing how to set boundaries in a way that I feel good about and yet gets my point across. So I took the class and I read the book, and I just kept practicing and practicing and practicing. Because what happened, very interesting with that, is people in my clinic, my patients, would come in and do the very same thing my mother was doing. And I allowed it to happen. I would go home crying. It was like, so again, it wasn't just my mom and her issues. I was allowing it to affect my work. And so others would come in and say nasty things to me and be mean to me, not because they were after me. It was because from their own pain reflected onto me, and I allowed it. So as I took the class and as I learned about boundaries and what that meant, when people started doing that, I say, you know what, I would stop them. I'd say, I understand what you're going through, but let's deal with that right here and now. Instead of allowing them to go on and on, because people will dump things on us, right? They'll just keep going and going and going. And we need to stop them in a way that is effective and loving and still protects you. Because if you don't feel protected and if you don't take care of yourself, people will continue to do that. You won't feel good about it. And what will happen is that it will turn your body's pH and break your immune system down. Every single time. Okay, I've seen it. I've seen it a million times in my clinic. It will break your immune system down. So what you need to do is understand boundaries is a huge part, and then practicing. So I went to support groups. I found things on in churches. At that time they didn't have internet, right? So I was going to say online. I was like, no, I didn't have internet at that time. And I just kept going to support groups. And that was very powerful because I had to practice it. We did role playing. Then I would go home and practice with my friends. I would find friends to say, hey, I need help with this. Can we role play? And that was huge. It really made a big difference. So find a buddy. And if you want to do it with me, I'd be more than happy to do it with you. Practice setting up boundaries. And when you do that, you're going to see the difference. You'll see the shifting in that. So that was one, the boundaries book and the support groups and all that. And I'm sure they have something online by now. But the other one is called Nonviolent Verbal Communication. And it's very interesting. As I'm talking to the woman who introduced me to that, happened to click on the Facebook, and I see her face on here. It's really, yeah, there's a reason for that. She was a wonderful woman. When I was living in Panama, she said, all our life we communicate. We're social beings and we communicate all the time, but we don't know how to communicate effectively, not only to express our needs and wants, but to receive from people. And so she went from Panama, she went to California to do a workshop on nonviolent communication. And again, there's a whole book on it, there's a whole course on it. And she came back a different person. She was having problems with her divorce and didn't know how to communicate. She realized it was not just her husband, her ex-husband, it was also her. But as she came back, I could see the shifting in her. And that opened my mind. It's like, yeah, there it is. We need to learn the right words to use to express the thoughts that we really want to in a way that the person can receive it and we feel good about it, right? So nonviolent communication, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a violent relationship, although I was. I was in an emotionally, mental, spiritual relationship that was definitely violent on many aspects with my ex-husband. But if I had these skills, it would have been so helpful. But it is for everybody. It is not just for violent behavior. It is to learn how to communicate effectively. And again, when you learn how to communicate effectively, guess what happens? You feel good about it and the person reacts differently to you. So instead of, for example, coming at somebody and says, you're pissing me off, but the way you're putting those dishes away is pissing me off and you need to do it this way because this is the way I've done it and you're doing it in a stupid way and you're doing X, Y, Z. I mean, it's stupid stuff like that. Instead, taking a step back and saying, hey, I see that you're doing dishes like this. What about if we organize it a little bit differently and make it easier for both of us and still get the job done? I mean, it's just simple stuff like that, right? But then you take it to the next level and be able to communicate with serious stuff like your emotions. Like, hey, what you just said was very harsh on me and I didn't really like the way it made me feel. Can we talk about it? Instead of reacting to what somebody just said and said, I can't believe you just said that. Who do you think you are? I've had a bad day and now you're coming home and telling me like that, right? It's a whole different vibe, right? But you have to learn the words to say so that you're not making them react and yet you're expressing yourself. So nonviolent communication skills, I don't know the name of the exact book. I'll put it down below and have it. Now, before this gets too long, I'm going to pull up my computer and share with you guys this last bit. I could tell I'm... Okay, here we go. Let me take... I have my lemon water. You could tell it's lemon. Having my lemon water to make sure that I'm able to go through the day, and now I'm losing it worse. Wait a minute. Let's do regular water. Boy, I lost my voice in that one. So I have my Boy, difference in voice. Wow, isn't that something? So I thought the lemon water would clear that up, but it was the regular water that I had. All right. Practicing when I'm preaching here. Okay. So when you are trying to decide what part of your body has been affected, whether it's from cancer, whether it's from a disease that you've been struggling with, your challenge, doesn't matter what it is, look to see what the body part is that is related to that emotion. So again, I downloaded something for you guys and take a look at that connection, right? So for example, there's one that I really like to look at here. There's a whole bunch. The colon, for example, people who have bowel movement, constipation issues, is ugly, indigestible conflict. Indigestible conflicts. Well put. I know when I was going through, I've had constipation problems most of my life, and now I don't, but growing up and in my early adult time, and that again was things were coming at me. I didn't know how to digest them and really take care of them, and it affected my colon. Breast, you need to look at women if you're having any breast issues, breast cancer of any kind, right-handed, no, right breast is conflict with your partner, usually male, somebody male in your family. Left breast is child, home, mother, the nurturing side, and that I've seen consistently. So right is more the nurturing side, left is more the male side. And if you have issues on either end, male, female, look at that. That's huge. Let me just one heart issues, perpetual conflict. Yeah, so if you're not having, you've not been raised or been in a loving environment, the heart is affected, right? So I could go down the line over and over, but the bottom line is that look at that. Also, as I'm sitting here talking to you guys, New German Medicine by Dr. Richard Hamer. I'm going to put that down below as well for you guys. Did all the work, and I've told you guys a story about his son getting killed, and he ended up with cancer himself, and then he dealt just with the emotional part and healed himself. So all these resources, these are by people who have gone through it, and everything I'm sending you, it's not just me, it's thousands of people now and practitioners are seeing the connection that when you have a disease of any kind, it is related to a certain organ. There's a connection there that you need to look at. Dr. Richard Hamer, for example, has looked at 20,000 people and have seen it over and over. The video that Ashla sent yesterday was a psychotherapist who saw the change in his brother who had fourth stage, I believe it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he looked horrible, and he went deep into his emotional issues and healed himself. This can happen, this definitely can happen, not only with cancer, but with all diseases, that when you go deep into your emotional, mental, spiritual part and you rebalance it and look to see what it takes to heal it, that you don't necessarily have to rely just on the food, just on the supplements, just on the therapies. Yes, they help your immune system, without a doubt. I wouldn't be teaching this if I didn't believe that. But 2/3 of healing comes from the rebalancing of the emotions, mental, spiritual part. That's huge, right? So it's only 1/3 of doing all these things that we always want, right? Oh, let's just do the food and the therapies and all that because that's what you understand. But 2/3 of healing really comes with this rebalancing. So don't negate the fact that that is a super important part of your healing process, right? So take a look at that, and then your homework is, like I said, go take your emotional freedom quiz. Spend some time in nature. That's one of the best places to be. If you're on the beach, a lake, in the woods, at a park, somewhere where you're by yourself in nature, and you sit there and really think about what are the root issues you need to deal with, and then start taking the steps, right? Now, last part, and then I'm going to let you guys go. When I was going through all this myself, I really struggled to do it by myself, and I'm a very strong person. Some of you on here know me, that I'm no wimp, I'm not a flake, but I couldn't do this on my own. Even though I'm a very strong woman, I couldn't do it, and I had to go get help. So I went to pastors and ministers from different churches who did therapies like this. I went to therapists. I just, that again, this was before the internet, so I had to seek them out. Pastor Henry Wright, love him. I went down there to Georgia. Big shout out to him, and he helped me tremendously. He had a whole group program going on there at the time, and things like that. So therapy with support group are just, they're super. You could do that, or get somebody to do one-on-one. There is something called a Cancer Coaching Association. It's there's a couple of them now online. I would highly encourage you, go get help with somebody because doing this on your own is tough. Yes, you could go and start facing it and seeing what the issues are, but to go through that process of, doing the boundaries and learning the communication and doing some of the other practical things is tough by yourself. Just saying. There are cancer coaches now. There are people who are specifically there to help you, hold you accountable and guide you through it. It's not me. That's not my part. I am going to tell you about something later today that we could do the whole picture, but to specifically help you to rebalance the emotional, mental, spiritual part, I don't do that anymore. I simply don't have the time. I used to spend on average like a couple of hours with each person when I had my clinic. So I only saw a few people each day, right? Because it takes a lot of time to walk through it and then understand what the whole process is, right? So I don't do it anymore, but I'm giving you guys the resources so that you know exactly what is out there so that it can help you, and choose one, right? So take a look at the resource I'm going to send you today and choose one and move on it, right? The whole part of this challenge is not that you're just getting this information, but that you act on it on some level. Okay, there's no right and wrong of how much to act on it or how much to do. It's just that you take a step. Okay, that's the most important part. Okay, guys, talk to me. I know some of you already mentioned that you want to PM me, private message me. That's great. If you need my know how to do private messaging, let me know. I'm here. Not a problem. But the main thing at this point is to act on it. Take your quiz today and figure out your next step. Now, just talking about next step, tonight, I don't know, later this afternoon, maybe like about 5 o'clock when I'm done with my meetings, I'm going to have another video to show you a next step. Okay, so I want to be there for you, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at what is something else that you could do to stay on track with this whole cleansing process. And so I'll talk to you guys later today. But again, let me know if there's anything that comes up. Post it down below. I will be here for you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you. Now go take that quiz. All right, see you guys. Bye.